and welcome. I'm Ijoma Unyato. Tonight, Presidential Election Tribunal rejects request to inspect INEC server by the PDP and its presidential candidate in the 2019 election. Atiku Abubakar says application is premature. Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele unfolds 5-year action plan targeted at growing the non-oil sector, hints on fresh bank recapitalization. Vice President Oshibajo meets with Nigerians in New York, insists state policing would effectively tackle rising kidnapping in the country, as he also holds session with the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations. And U.S. targets Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei in new wave of hard-hitting sanctions on the country.
On business news tonight, Central Bank of Nigeria reiterates determination towards achieving low inflation environment and stable exchange rates.
On sports news tonight, Super Eagles forward Samuel Kalu has been given the green light by doctors to continue to play at the Africa Cup of Nations after a heart scare.
And from Abuja, INEC Chairman Professor Mahmood Yakubu meets with 387 electoral officers in Abuja in continuation of the Commission's review of the 2019 general elections.
The Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal has turned down the request of the People's Democratic Party and its candidate Atiku Abubakar to access the server and data from the smart card reader deployed in the February the 23rd presidential election. Justice Muhammad Garba, who read the unanimous ruling of the 5-man panel, held that it would be premature to delve into the issue of the existence of a central server at INEC. The legal team of Atiku and the PDP have vowed to challenge the ruling at the Supreme Court. Our correspondent Amaka Okafor reports.
It's a rainy day in the city of Abuja, but that did not stop lawyers and parties in the petition of the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, from being present in the proceedings. Inside the court, lawyers exchanged pleasantries as usual. In court are the former governor of Anambra State, Mr. Peter Obi, on behalf of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and the former EFCC chairman, Mr. Nuhu Ribadu, who is representing President Muhammadu Buhari. And they settle down for the business of the day. No sooner had the panel of the tribunal arrived, they delivered their ruling on 2 applications before the tribunal. The tribunal, in a unanimous decision, refused to grant the application filed by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, seeking to inspect the server and card readers said to have been used for the presidential election, on the grounds that the parties have joined issues and the tribunal cannot, at the interlocutory stage, make an order that would affect the substantive issue. The chairman of the tribunal, Justice Muhammad Garba, who read the lead judgment, said that granting the application would create the impression that the tribunal has concluded that there is a central server where results of the February 23, 2019 elections were received and stored. Parties react to the ruling.
We strongly feel that Section 151 entitles us to have access to this material. We are not asking the court to decide on the issue whether there's a server or not. So the aspect of the court prejudging any issue doesn't arise at all.
Since issues have been joined, they cannot delve into those issues now before trial. These are the issues to be tried. You can't try them piecemeal.
The pre-trial hearing has been adjourned to the 26th of June 2019 for continuation. Amaka Okafor, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Court of Appeal has ordered President Muhammadu Buhari to respond within 5 days to the appeal filed against his qualification for the 2019 presidential election. The All Progressives Congress and the Independent National Electoral Commission were also given 5 days to respond to all issues raised about the president's education qualification in the election. Justice Dati Yahaya, who issued the order, also directed the president's counsel, Abdullahi Abubakar, to file the necessary processes in relation to the appeal filed by 3 appellants, Agu Kalu, Labaran Ismail, and Hasi El Kuris. The decision of the appellate court was sequel to a motion on notice filed by counsel to the appellants Uchenna and Dubuisi. Carlo, Ismail and El Khouris had approached the appellate court to set aside the judgment of the Abuja division of the Federal High Court, which declined to hear their suit challenging the president's educational qualifications before the 2019 general election. Hearing in the appeal is adjourned to July the 8th. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has fixed Friday, June the 28th, to rule on a preliminary objection filed by Justice Rita Ofili Ajumogobia challenging her trial before the court. Justice Rilwan Ekawa fixed the date after listening to the arguments of both parties on the issue. Justice Ajumogobia's counsel, Mr. Robert Clark, in moving his application on the objection, told the court that his client is still a judge of the Federal High Court, and as such, she could not be tried in line with the precedent set in the case of Justice Ngajua. He also noted that a letter exhibited by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, purportedly written and signed by the President to the Chief Justice of Nigeria, approving her sack in line with the NJC's recommendation, is not enough to satisfy the Evidence Act 2011. In his response, counsel to the EFCC, Rotimi Oyedepo, asked the court to rely on the exhibits placed by the prosecution before the court and to dismiss their application. Now, besides legal matters, a Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has ordered the arrest of the chairman of Innocent Motors, Mr. Innocent Chukwuma, along with Mr. Charles Chukwu and Sonny Anajeku. The arrest order follows what the court describes as the persistent refusal of the accused persons to appear before it to answer criminal charges brought against them by the Inspector General of Police. Justice Ayokunle Faji issued the order while ruling on an application for their arrest filed by the IGP through the Ministry of Justice. Sometime in December 2015, Mr. Chukwuma and his firm Innocent Motors, Chukwu Anajeku, and a shipping company, Mtusi Lines, were charged before the court on 4 counts bordering on conspiracy, forgery, and fraud to the tune of 2.4 billion naira. But afterwards, only the shipping company was represented in court. Following the failure of the accused persons to appear, the prosecutor, Mr. Julius Ajakaye, filed and argued the motion for a bench warrant against them. Mr. Bolaji Ayorinde, a member of the prosecution team, also appealed to the court for a date to arraign the defendants. Justice Faji fixed Friday, June the 28th, for the arraignment. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, says there was no voter suppression at the recently concluded 2019 general elections, refuting allegations from some quarters that the elections were not free and fair. Professor Osinbajo insists there is no iota of truth in the accusations and that the present administration will rather focus on addressing challenges facing the nation, such as insecurity. At a meeting with the Council on Foreign Relations, the Vice President says the major focus of the government is working closely with countries like the United States and the United Kingdom through intelligence gathering to ensure that ISIS does not find a base in West Africa. The Vice President also met in private with the United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed at the UN headquarters. And the Vice President also believes that the spate of kidnapping in the country is an economic crime which can be resolved through state policing. Professor Osinbajo was speaking at a town hall meeting with Nigerians in New York. He also describes as misplaced the narrative that the President wants to Islamize Nigeria, adding that the federal government remains focused on rescuing the 15-year-old schoolgirl Leah Sharibu from captivity. Our correspondent Gloria Umezoke reports.
It's a convergence of Nigerians in diaspora, many of which live in New York. It's a town hall meeting with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who is accompanied by Nigeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Professor Tijani Bande, among other ambassadors and government functionaries.
I'm sure
Nigerians here eagerly announce how much they are willing to give back to their country as a way of help.
We ask that the government involve well-meaning diasporans as technocrats.
When it was time to field questions, the enthusiasm was palpable.
What's the first thing that you will do to increase the visibility of women?
Dozens of concerns were raised about the level of insecurity in the country, particularly kidnapping, which has seen families distraught, including that of Leah Sharibu.
her case is as important as ever and has received worldwide attention, but at the same time, when you measure it against the performance of the same government that has freed To date, almost 108 Christian girls. I think that perhaps we shouldn't say that it's a question of religious freedom, but a question of partiality to one religion. But whoever it is who is responsible for kidnapping is committing an economic crime. To solve our problem, to solve the problem, we definitely need community policing. We need state police or policing at the community level.
Many also expressed their worries over the poverty status of the country and unemployment.
As of 2010, Nigeria had 112.7 million people living in extreme poverty. And there was nothing in place. There was no social investment program. There was no social security, no way of getting people out of poverty. And that's the reason why we decided to put in place a national social investment program, because it was to address questions of how to get our people out of poverty.
The Vice President entertained about 40 questions, narrating progress made while calming fears as he promises that the government is determined to clean up the system. Over 3 hours of conversation between the Vice President and Nigerians here in New York. In answer to many of the issues raised, the Vice President is promising a strategy while hoping for greater participation by the private sector to resolve many of the concerns raised here. From New York, here in the United States, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The central bank governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, has announced plans to launch the trade monitoring system targeted at reducing the processing time of export documents from 1 week to a single day. Mr. Emefiele, who revealed the plan during the presentation of his 5-year plan in Abuja, explains that the Apex Bank will soon commence implementation of a 500 billion naira facility aimed at growing non-oil sector.
The central bank governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, at public presentation of his action plan for the next 5 years.
Stable financial system is imperative.
He says the nation's agriculture, manufacturing and industrial sectors are yielding positive results. But this, however, is not without the challenge of how to attain a single-digit inflation regime and how to create jobs in the post-recession era.
At a point in our nation's history, Nigeria survived on revenues from non-oil sector to the extent that we were a dominant exporter of agricultural produce into the global market. Some of these products include cocoa, groundnut, cotton, and palm oil, to mention a few. Our focus in agriculture supported the raw materials need of our industrial sector and created employment opportunities for millions of Nigerians. But regrettably, the discovery of crude oil and the increasing reliance on crude oil revenues led to a severe downturn in the agriculture and manufacturing sectors in Nigeria, while also exposing our economy to the vulnerabilities that normally accompany an increased dependence on a single commodity for survival.
And then he reels out his plans for the next 5 years, which will include improving economic growth through lending to the real sectors to create jobs, promote local production of goods and services, as well as improve foreign direct investment.
We intend to aggressively implement our 500 billion facility aimed at supporting the growth of our non-oil exports, which would help to improve non-oil export earnings. We would launch a trade monitoring system, TRMS, in October 2019, which is an automated system that will reduce the length of time required to process export documents from 1 week to 1 day. This measure will help support our efforts at improving our non-oil exports of goods and services.
Mr. Emefiele also bears his mind on the likelihood for bank recapitalization within the next 5 years.
The capitalization has weakened quite substantially, and there is a need for us to say it is time to recapitalize Nigerian banks again. It's a policy thrust which will be discussed at the Committee of Governors meeting, and of course the framework for the recapitalization of Nigerian banks will be unfolded and for the whole world to know.
Through all of these plans and many more to come, the central bank hopes to create over 10 million jobs from the agricultural sector for the next 5 years. This will be followed by an aggressive pursuit of its objective of price and exchange rate stability.
In part 2, after the break, we'll have more on the CBN Governor's 5-year action plan. I'll be joined by the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company and an economist, Mr. Bismarck Rawane. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.